Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mobile Application Development Lecture Series. This is continuation of our previous class wherein we have started developing Android mobile applications. Today is a very important class with respect to the theoretical aspect of the layouts, the views, the view groups, events, and all such matters will be discussed. So before getting started, what did we discuss in the previous class? So if you remember, the previous class was discussed, the previous lecture was all about Android components. There are 4 components of Android. The one, the basic building blocks of Android, that is activity. The second one was content provider, the broadcast receiver, and activities, content providers, broadcast receiver, and the other one was intent. So I just forgot it. Okay, that's fine. We have discussed about all these 4 components of very important building blocks of our Android. So the 4 with that, what was an activity? So without these building blocks, we will not be able to develop any application. The first was the activities are very important. Sorry, the 4th one was the services. The 4th one was the services. So with any of the applications we are building, we should include either of the one. So activities, services, broadcast receiver, or the content provider. So you can develop this using all these 4 components, or either of the one is very much required. You cannot develop without any of these components. So activities with a UI. So if you are developing an application with a UI, then you will be using the activities. If you do not want a UI, then you will be developing it using services. You need to broadcast, or you want to make application start. So get the information, then you use broadcast receiver. Then when you want to access data, either using a database or XML or from a text file, then you use the content provider. So using these building blocks and complete and under application itself. So this is what we discussed in the previous class. With that, we are going to continue with today's class, the views, layouts, and resources. So what exactly we'll be looking into it in detail? We'll be looking into the views, the view group, and the view hierarchy, the layout, event handling, and the resources, and the screen measurement. This is today's class agenda, what we are going to do. So already you have developed an application already. So now it will be very easy to understand what you mean by it. So that's the reason we did a practical approach towards application first, and now we are discussing about each of those components so that you can very well understand what you mean by all these components. To start with, the first one we are going to take is the view. Everything you see is a view. Example, if the picture is not visible, there are many views. Say you have a drop down list, you have a slider, you have a button, you have a page picker, many things are there. Or else you consider a edit text box or a button or a radio button. Every control we call it as a view, is what we mean. If you look at your mobile device, every user interface element that you see is a view. Every element is a view. Every element is a view. So this is what we need to say, what do you mean by a view. So in theoretical aspect, what do you mean by view? Views are Android basic user interface building blocks. So these are the building blocks. So without a view, the collection of views will give you a bright picture. So the basic building blocks are nothing but the views. What are the different building blocks you have? You come across a display text, one side. You have a plain text, you have edit text. Text view, what do you mean by text view? Text view is simple. Whatever we write it. So whatever we just display a static is a text view. Say USN. So this is static, this is a text. So if it is not editable, let me call it as a text view. This is nothing but a text view. Next, you have edit text. Edit text means where a user can give the input. So this is the editor where user can give input or you can give, or you have to give the input. So where there is some editable which can be done, you use the control, the view or control, you call it as an edit. It's nothing but a class. Everything is a class. Next, another set of something. There are thousands of views which you can use. But I'm just giving a simple idea. There are buttons. Buttons. This is a button. Button is also used. So buttons are used to perform some action. To making sure that on clicking something, you perform some action. So that is what is the purpose of a use. This is also. Next, in the button you have menus. Menus you can have where it is listed out. Usually you have something like your file, view, or something like that. So on clicking that, you come across a list of items. So list of items here, on selecting that, it will travel to navigate to the next view. So this is nothing but a button part or one set of views. Then scrollable. So if you have a view, you can have a scrollable kind of a thing where you can scroll things. You can have that is this particular thing. This is a scrollable view where usually you will be using it for huge data where you are accessing the database. You want to access the multiple data items which are there in the listed items. Then you use the scrollable. Then you can show the image also. You can display image on your Android phone, or Android device using visual service, and everything is a subclass of view. Every view, all these buttons, text box, cross, everything is retrieved or derived from the view class. So this is what it is. So views have properties tab. What do you mean by properties? It has color, dimensions, positioning. It can receive user inputs. Maybe it is clicking user interactive. It is visible. All these are the properties of a view. Every view has. Even this has all those properties. This has all those properties. It will have ID. It will be able to access the data user input. It depends on the respective control or the view, what properties it defines, what properties a user can use it. So these are all the properties, the basic properties which we can have. So it have relationships to other views also. The properties have the relationships to other views. So example for the views, the same thing. So if you are observing it, you have a button, you have a slider or a edit text which is a wrong image, a seek bar or checkbox, radio button, on switch on or off. All these are the different views which we can make use of it. So coming on to that, how do you use it? You use it by collecting those views. In XML, you type it using an XML file, or you can use a Java code. So whichever you want. So the main purpose of views are graphically it can be represented using the Android Studio. You can access these views using Android Studio or through programmatically or through XML. So let's go one by one. Views defined in layout editor. So if you can observe, this is your Android Studio, where you have a small application which you have defined, a counter kind of a thing, where you have observed this is how the view looks like, a counter, the constraints are there, and many other parts. So this is how it looks like in your Android Studio. So it has got an XML file. So this is a visual representation of your XML file. So it's a visual representation of your XML file. So now, considering a particular view, what all things it consists of? Consider this is a counter or a view. You have used it. So what can you do a resizing handle? You can resize the handle. Constraint line and handle. Constraint line and handle. This is your constraint line and handle which you have to do. Baseline handle. This is your baseline handle. And constraint handle, this is your constraint handle which we have used it, we have dragged on all the four corners and we have done it. So a view consists of all these handles where you can use it to manipulate or bring out the constraints or many other aspects. These are all, these are the handles which we can use it. And a view in an XML file looks like this. So an XML, a text view, it has got an ID in it. It has got a width, height, color, text, background, size, style. So everything, every property you can access it using one XML. So which means a view has a visual representation, a view has XML representation, a view can also be accessed using a Java code. So previous what we saw was a visual representation of a view. Now we are seeing XML representation of a view, and now we are going to see a Java code representation of a view. The same text view can also be created using the keyword new. So which automatically creates a text view in which, and you can access all those properties even in your text, sorry, even in a Java code, which means, which very clearly specifies you that a view can be seen in as part of a visual representation, as the XML representation, as well as on your Java code. So moving on to the next, what is a context? So which is a very important one. The definition says, context is an interface to global information about an application environment. So in simple words, if I have to say, if you are working on a particular activity, that itself is your context. So what is a real-time context you want to act upon? Say the information which you are accessing it, under which context you are accessing it. For every view has a context. So which means if you want to perform any operation, on which view you have to select, because on a screen there are multiple views. So out of these multiple views, which is the view you want to perform the operation? So that information we can get it through the context. If you want to perform an operation, I want to perform it on this particular view, so get the context out of it and then you perform the action. That is the purpose of a context. So how do you get the context? Which context? Context is a class, create an object, get application context. So using that application, get application context, you will be able to retrieve the context information, and then using the activity, using this keyword, this tells you on this particular context, you have to make use of this particular text view object. So this is the purpose of a context. Out of all the controls or the views, which is the context you want to perform the operation, defines your context. The next, custom view. What do you mean by custom views? Say the views which we have seen here are all built-ins. So edit, text, radio button, menu bar, sleek bar, your button, everything is nothing but your built-in views. Now can a user define or can a user create himself a new view or a new control out of it? Yes, a user can define his own control. So that is nothing but custom views. User defined views, we call it as a custom views. Over 100 different types of views available from the Android system, all children of the which class? The view class. View class is a base class which has been derived by all other views. If necessary, you can create custom views by subclass, which means a user defined. If you want to create your own view, your own control, then you have to derive it from the base class view. You have to derive it from the base class view. So that is what it means. So now let's move on to the view group and the view hierarchy which comes. A view group is a type of a view that can contain other views. So we can call it as, in a group of views, we call it as a view group. So it contains a collection of views. A view group contains collection of views. A view group is the base class for all layouts and view containers, which means a layout, a big layout is there. In that big layout, this is our big layout, which we can say. In this layout, we have many views. So we can call this as a view group. We can call this as a collection of views is nothing but a view groups. This view group we can call it as it can be arranged in a linear manner or a hierarchical manner or a vertical or a grid view, table view. So the arrangement which we call it as a layouts. So in which view, how do you want to group the views is nothing but which defines you the layout structure. So now, so there are different ways, a scrolling view you have, a linear layout you have, a recycler views you have. We'll go one by one. So first, everything, all the views have been defined from the view group. So a collection of views is nothing but your view groups. So the view group can have other view groups or other views. A view group can have only the views. So the view group is a collection of different views. Say example, what do you mean by view hierarchy and a screen layout? Very important, please observe it very carefully. So this is our control or a view which we want to use it. So this is our count 0, a one single view which we have defined, a custom designed view which we can say. And now how exactly it is represented in a hierarchical structure. If you observe, it is in a linear layout because on top of it next. So which means it is in a linear fashion, one after the other. So that we call it as a linear layout. So in a linear layout, it consists of a button, text view and a button. So it has a button here, it has a text view and it has a button. So this view group consists of 3 views, 2 buttons and 1 text view. So this is arranged in a hierarchical structure or linear. So in a hierarchical way, if you want to see it, this is how it is appeared. If you want to see it in a XML file, this is how it looks. A linear layout is first a layout is created. Inside that layout, we have button, text view and a button. So this is a visual representation of your hierarchical structure. So if it is in hierarchical, if you want to visualize, this is how. If you want to visualize actual way, this is how it is. So XML, visual, hierarchical. So 3 ways you can represent it in 3 ways. Next, view hierarchy in the component tree. So you can observe it in a tree way also, tree structure also. If the same view is represented in a component tree hierarchical structure, you can see linear layout, button, text view, button. So this way also you can see it, meaning you can view or you can visualize the current views in different ways. It is very important or it is very useful for a developer to visualize in whichever way he is convenient. Best practices of view hierarchies. Arrangement of view hierarchy affects app performance. Uses smallest number of simplest views possible. Keep the hierarchy flat. Limit nesting of views and view groups. So these are just important information or the practice, the best practices which we can have. So now comes the layouts. There are different types of layouts. So what do you mean by layouts? Layouts are specific types of view groups, as I said. So you can group an item set of views in a hierarchy, in a linear fashion or vertical fashion or a grid fashion or a scrollable fashion. So that is nothing but in which structure you want to group it is nothing but a layouts or subclasses of view groups. True? Contain child views. A view group, a layout contains child views. Can be in a row, column, grid, table, whichever way you want it. So what are the different types we can have? So we can have it in a linear layout, either it is in a horizontal or a vertical. So this is a linear fashion in this way or in a this way. So this is a relative layout, which means there are 3 components. You can drag and however you can arrange it whichever way you want. With all the reference depends on the relativeness, which means this is related to this is related to this. So if you want to have your own structure, then it is good to go with a relative layout. or no, I want it in a grid layout. Certain information is good to be represented using a grid, so better use a grid layout for that activity, or else use a table layout, which is very well used in our web applications, the table structure. So which means in an activity while you are designing, it is up to a user to decide which layout structure he want to use it. So if he is defining a registration form, it's good to go with this. You want to represent more data in a tabular form, use a grid layout. You want to order it, you want to arrange it yourself, go with a relative layout. You want to order it based on a table structure, use that. So whichever you are comfortable, whichever you are, the requirement is, make use of those respective layouts. So what is the difference between a class hierarchy versus a layout hierarchy? View class hierarchy is standard object oriented. What do you mean by class? Class is nothing but a user defined a class is nothing but a user defined or we can call it as a user defined just a minute. An object is an instance of a class. A class is nothing but collection of your user data members and member functions. A class can be defined as it is a collection of data members and member functions. So what do you mean by a class then? It is actually a blueprint of your object. So what all the data members you need to have, what are the member functions you need to have. Usually a class is user defined, wherein you are going to create your own class. So or else it is a built-in class. So you can give a definition of such nature. So a hierarchy, it can be in a class hierarchy or it can be a layout hierarchy. So view class hierarchy is started object oriented programming using inheritance. So inheritance is one such feature in object orientedness where you can inherit the features of the parent class in your derived class. For examples, button is a text view. This is very important, button is a text view. Text view is a view, very good. View is a object. So superclass, subclass relationship. So every view is taken out from a base class view. So view is a base class, all the views are a derived classes. Whereas in a layout hierarchy is how views are visually arranged. For example, linear layout can contain buttons arranged in a row, which means one after the other. Whereas in a class hierarchy, it is been derived. This is your class hierarchy A, B. B is been derived from A. Whereas in a layout hierarchy, so this is how it is arranged. So this is a simple example if you want to have a picturization of your what do you mean by class hierarchy or versus layout hierarchy. So the code part, a linear, actually what exactly it is mentioning is your linear layout. So this is how if you want to define all your views, you have to place it inside a linear layout. So if the text is not visible, you can open any of the XMLs, you can observe the layout structure, either it could be linear or a relative or a grid. Layout created in Java activity code. So how do you create a layout in a Java code? So even you can create, as we can create every views in our Java code, even the layouts can also be created in a Java code. Linear layout is a class. This is an object. Using new keyword, we will be able to create the linear layout, which means without XML, can we create an application only using Java? Yes, it is possible. Everything is possible in Java, which means without designing anything in XML, you can directly do it with a Java. Without Java, can we run XML? No, it is not possible, because basically on your Android, it can understand only the Java code. The XML is also will be packaged. It is only for the visual representation, but the execution will be on your Java code. So the text views, how do you use it? This is just to give a picture of the theoretical aspect which we have used it in our programs. Setting width and height in Java. So can we set the height? Yes, if you remember, there is something called as patch parent,
match parent and wrap parent. So this will allow you to set the height and the width of a particular layout. So very important on the event handling. What do you mean by event handling? What is the event? An interrupt or any on-click event or on mouse over event. So an event is nothing but actually an interrupt, wherein it is asking you to perform certain operation. So a mechanism of handling that event is nothing but event handling. So now let's see what are the different, what kind of events we can come across. In the basic way, we come across events when it is through the UI by clicking on a button or tapping on a particular area or dragging or mouse over or zoom in. All these are the events which we can generate it. So which will be accessed by the Android device or your application. So you have to make sure that what kind of event you are generating, what is the purpose out of it. So basically if you have in our simple calculator, what event did we use events? Yes, on clicking a button, an event was generated, which means a particular operation is going to be executed, function is called, inside that function the code will be written it. So that is nothing but an on-click event. So we handled the event using a function. So this mechanism we call it as an event handling. So there should be a mechanism even to detect it and to perform. How do we do that? A device detected an activity such as walking, driving, tilting. So even those are also the operations, the tilting, vibration, everything is an event. So there are zooming or many kinds of events will be generated. If you want to make use of those events and make an activity out of it, but perform certain operation, it is you need to write functions for such kind of events or interrupts. Events are noticed by the Android system. Yes, every event is first noticed by the Android system, and looking at the context, which context is you at present it is there, live the current context, for that context the event is given. So on that event, if the context makes use of that event, then it performs, or else it will be given to the Android system. It is just like it is going to do a broadcast. Who wants this event? So first it will be used by the current application. Because the context is current application, so it makes use of it, it performs the operation on that particular event. So now let's see that. How do we handle the events? Methods that do something in response to a click. Yes, so which means on clicking a method is called. On clicking a method is called. A method called an event handler is triggered by a specific event and does something in response to the event. So on click event will call a function and then that function performs certain operations. So this is how an event handling mechanism works. Handling clicks in XML and Java. Very simple code has been designed, which we have already seen it. This is with respect to your Java code. This is our Java code. This is our XML code. What happens? So if you observe in our XML, we have on-click event. In our Java code, we have written a function called showToast. So on clicking on this event, this function has to be executed. So this function has to be called. What's the function name? The function name is showToast. This is the function we want to link it to the on-click event. So that job we are doing it in our XML file, Android on-click is equal to showToast. So this is where we are showing, we are linking the function to the event. So this is how it happens, the linking. So we will be wondering, when you have thousands of functions written, which function to be called is how do you match it? So that event, whichever the event you are having it, any kind of event, whichever the function you have linked it, the respective function will be called. So they have made it very easy in our Android. So that's the purpose. Setting on click unless in Java. So in Java also can we do that? Yes. So first you have created a button for which you have find view by ID and then button dot set on click listener. This is how we did it actually. So using Java itself, we created a listener telling that if there is some event clicked, so I would like to, if there is a event clicked on this particular button, I would like to listen it. So that's the reason. Set on ClickListener on. It will be always on. An event is generated, this function is executed. So this is the mechanism which we have used. So you can use either of the one. So it doesn't matter. So normally everyone prefers to use this way mechanism. And at the last, the resources. What are the resources? Separate static data from code in your layouts. So in your layouts, you can have a separate codes. You can have strings, you can have dimensions, images, menu text, colors, text, useful for localization, which is nothing but, if you observe, when we created our project, we had a resources folder where you can have a strings, where you can have images, or you can have all those resources used in our application will be stored in a resource folder. All our button IDs, the strings, the color, the styles, everything is stored in this particular folder wherein it will be. So your application, every application will have a resource. So this resource will supply you all the information whatever you want. Even in the store, if you want to store, you're going to store it here. Where are the resources in your project? So this is how it looks. If you look at your app project, manifest will be there, Java will be there, then you have resources. Inside that you have a drawable, layout, MIPAPs, values, strings, styles, colors, dimensions, many things will be there, which is not visible on your screen, but you have come across that. So now, refer to resources in code. You have a layout. You can also refer the layouts in your resources. You can see the views in your resources. You can have strings in your resource. All these things are available in your resources. So with this, I would like to end today's session. Before that, what all things we learned today? So we have learned the layouts, the view groups. Views are nothing but whatever you see it on your application, everything is a view. Example, text, edit text, menus, buttons, which is a very important question which they will ask you. What do you mean by views? Expand with 5 views. So it's very easy to score this particular question. So and then we have seen the layouts, what are the different types of layouts, linear layout, relative layout, grid layout, table layout. So we have seen, and then at the end we looked into the events as well. What do you mean by event? How do we handle the event mechanism? At last we looked into the resources part. So with this, I would like to end today's session. Thank you all.